Kendrick Whitaker was 38 years old and had spent his entire life believing one thing. A man who shows up every single day never has to worry about being left behind. He was not flashy. 6'2", broad-shouldered, dark-skinned, with hands shaped by years of construction work. He owned 8 rental properties almost nobody knew about. He held a silent partnership in one of Atlanta's fastest-growing development firms. Every morning, without exception, he woke at 5:15, made 2 cups of black coffee, and went to work. He believed in quiet. He believed in showing up. He believed his wife knew exactly how deeply she was loved. He was wrong about that last part. One Tuesday morning in October, Nia Whitaker placed a manila envelope on the kitchen table of their 2-story home in Sweet Auburn, and the entire structure of Kendrick's world shifted beneath his feet. Inside were divorce papers, already filled out, already dated, organized with the kind of precision that told him she had not decided this that morning. She had decided this a long time ago. But here is the part that stops you cold. Nia had one condition before she would sign. For 30 days, she said, her voice quiet and controlled, though her eyes trembled at the edges. Every morning, you carry me from our bedroom to the front door, just the way you did on our wedding day at Ebenezer Baptist Church. You look me in the eyes and say, "I love you." Do that for 30 days, and I will sign without a fight. A person hearing that condition might assume this is a story about humiliation, about a devoted man enduring 30 days of performance for a woman who had already moved on. That assumption would be completely wrong. Before we get into what actually happened, if you have ever loved someone with everything you had and felt that love go unseen, stay with this story. Because what unfolds over those 30 days is something nobody in that Sweet Auburn neighborhood saw coming. Not Nia, not her friends, not even Kendrick himself. Atlanta in October carries a particular quality of light, golden and slow, like afternoon honey in a mason jar. The sweet gum trees along Auburn Avenue had started turning rust and amber, and the air held the faint smell of someone's slow cooker running since morning. The Whitaker home sat on a corner lot. White brick, black shutters, a wide front porch with a swing that creaked in the same spot every single day. His wife had always meant to have that hinge oiled. She never got around to it. Inside, the kitchen still smelled like Ken's 5:15 coffee. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of their 8-year-old daughter, Amara, moving around upstairs. Kendrick stood at the counter, both hands around his mug, and looked at the envelope his wife had placed in front of him. He did not open it immediately. He already understood what was inside. Not because Nia had told him, but because men who pay close attention see things long before they are shown. He had noticed the late evenings, the phone tilted away when he walked by, the way she had stopped touching the back of his arm in the hallway. A small thing most people would never register, but Ken always noticed. He noticed everything. He had simply chosen not to say anything yet. Nia stood across the table, arms loosely crossed. Still beautiful. Warm, light brown skin, natural hair pulled back for a day of showings, wearing the gray cardigan she always wore on listing days. But her eyes were trembling beneath the calm. "Ken, I need us to be honest with each other." He set the mug down. "I am always honest with you, Nia." She slid the envelope forward. "I have been speaking with an attorney. I think we both know we have been strangers living in the same house for a long time now." From upstairs, Amara's feet stopped at the top of the stairs, the way children do when something important is happening below them. Ken heard it. He looked at the envelope. He looked at his wife. Without raising his voice a single degree, He asked about the condition. Naya told him. The silence that followed lasted about 4 seconds. Then Kendrick nodded. Okay, 30 days. Not because he believed 30 days could repair 10 years. He said it because at the top of those stairs, Amara had sat down, wrapped her arms around her knees, and pressed her small face against the railing. Ken could hear her breathing. The night before, his mother had called. Big Mama Gloria, 62 years old, with a voice that was somehow both warm and non-negotiable. Son, marriage is not a feeling. It is a structure you rebuild every single day. He did not know yet what the next 30 days were going to cost him. But day one was tomorrow. And Kendrick Whitaker always showed up. Stay close, because what Ken notices on day 9 will change the entire direction of this story. Day 1 was a Tuesday, and it was awkward in the way that only deeply honest moments can be. Ken woke at 5:15. He stood at the bedroom doorway, watching Naya sleep in the early gray light. Then he crossed the room, bent down, and lifted her. His wife stirred, opened her eyes, and for one unguarded second looked at him the way she used to. Soft, open, present. Then the moment passed. She straightened her expression, like a picture frame slipped crooked on the wall. He carried her down the hallway, past Amara's room with the painted butterflies on the door, down the stairs and to the front door. "I love you," he said. The words came out correctly, but flat, like a man reading terms from a contract. Naya looked at the door rather than at him. "Hang in there. Only 29 more days." From upstairs came a small giggle. Amara, already awake, already watching from the crack of her door, had been there the whole time. By day 5, something had shifted. Barely. Like the first quarter turn of a jar lid sealed too long. On day 3, Naya reached for her phone while Ken was lifting her, then caught herself and stopped. On day 4, he nearly lost his footing on the bottom stair, worn down from an overnight site inspection, and Naya grabbed his shoulders out of pure reflex. Her hands stayed a half-second longer than necessary. Ken noticed. He always noticed. By day 7, he had started remembering things buried under years of long shifts and responsibility. He remembered that Naya used to sing in the kitchen on Saturday mornings. He remembered her laugh, fast and completely unfiltered, as though she had no time to be refined about it. He had not heard that laugh in a long time. From a psychological standpoint, what was happening between them during these early days is called habituation, the quiet process by which the brain stops registering things it has seen too many times. After years together, they had each stopped truly seeing the other person. The 30-day challenge, with its enforced daily physical contact and repeated verbal affirmation, was functioning like deliberate exposure therapy, slowly reintroducing each person to the other, stripped of all the defensive noise that had built up over a decade. It was not romantic yet, but it was something. On day 8, Ken cooked, not takeout. He pulled out the handwritten index card Big Mama Gloria had given him the year they married. Fried chicken, collard greens, baked mac and cheese, with a coffee ring stain in the corner. He cooked everything from scratch while Amara sat on the counter and helped, which consisted primarily of sampling the mac and cheese at 10-minute intervals and looking completely innocent each time. When Nia came home from a late showing and walked into that kitchen, she stopped in the doorway. "You still remember Big Mama's recipe?" she said. "I remember everything," he said quietly. It was not meant to land the way it did, but it landed. She sat down and stayed for the evening. No disappearing upstairs, no half presence. She helped Amara with spelling words, and simply stayed in the room she was in. It was on day 9 that the temperature dropped. Ken had come home early to retrieve drawings he had left behind. He was in the kitchen when his wife's phone lit up on the counter. She had stepped upstairs to change. The notification preview was visible just long enough. "You want to meet today? Miss your energy." Sender, Trent M. Ken set down his glass carefully. He stood still for about 10 seconds. Then he walked to the downstairs bathroom, turned on the cold tap, and pressed both palms flat against the sink. He looked at himself in the mirror for a long time. He had suspected. Not clearly. Not in any way he had been willing to name, but somewhere beneath the surface, in the place where a person stores the things they are not yet ready to know, he had suspected. He did not confront her. He picked up his drawings and went back to the site. What Ken did in that moment reflects what therapists call protective withholding. Not denial and not passivity. It is the instinct of a person who understands that detonating a situation before fully understanding it serves no one. The mind's first response to betrayal is rarely rage. More often, it is a controlled stillness, a quiet gathering of information before any action is taken. Ken was not weak. He was thinking. Day 15 arrived, and with it, something neither of them had planned for. After the morning carry, instead of separating into their separate days, they both simply stayed at the front door. And then they started talking. Not about schedules or logistics, but about the actual weight of things. Naya talked about exhaustion, the kind that settles into your chest after years of performing confidence for clients and smiling in photos while feeling like the walls of your life are slowly closing in. She talked about feeling unseen, not because Ken was unkind, but because Ken was always somewhere else, even when physically present. Ken listened. He did not defend himself. Then he said something honest. He talked about the invisible pressure of carrying everything quietly. The properties, the projects, the family's security, and how he had convinced himself that providing was the same as loving. That because his wife never worried about a bill, she must know how deeply she was loved. He had confused security with intimacy. Psychologists call this a love language mismatch. When one partner expresses love through provision and acts of service, while the other receives love through verbal affirmation and quality time. Neither is wrong, but when the currency of love does not match, both partners can end up feeling unloved inside a relationship where love is genuinely present. It is one of the most quietly devastating sources of marital disconnection, and it almost never announces itself until something breaks. Both of them had been lonely inside the same house for years. Neither had said so until that morning, standing at the front door in their sock feet. On day 16, Nia posted a TikTok about the challenge. The original caption read, 30 days to save a marriage. By the next morning, she had quietly changed it to, this man still got it though. 200,000 views by sundown. Comments flooding in from women, writing, this is my marriage, and men writing, this is what I have been trying to say for years. Amara, who had been filming every morning carry on her tablet, read the comment section with the calm certainty of an 8-year-old who had known all along how this was going to turn out. That Sunday, the family attended Ebenezer Baptist together for the first time in 4 months. Big Mama Gloria watched them walk in, said nothing, and gave one slow nod, the way church mothers acknowledge something the Lord has already been working on. After the service, she put her hand on Ken's arm. Love is not talk, baby. It is repeated action. You keep repeating it. He kept repeating it. And on day 18, what he found changed everything. Day 18 started the same way all the others had. 5:15. 2 cups of coffee. The October wind pressing against the windows, moving the porch swing in slow arcs outside. Ken carried Naya to the front door, said the words, then went back upstairs. He was looking for his inspection clipboard, left somewhere in the bedroom, and he checked the dresser, the nightstand, the closet shelf. Not finding it, he opened the bottom drawer of Naya's bedside table. What he found instead was an envelope. Thicker than the one from the kitchen table, more organized. The kind of organized that takes time and intention. Inside were completed divorce papers, property division terms already outlined in careful detail. And as he read, something cold and precise clicked into place. Because the division had been structured around one assumption, that Kendrick Whitaker was a middle-class project manager with one jointly owned property and a standard retirement account. Nia had no knowledge of the 8 rental properties, no knowledge of the development partnership, no knowledge of the accounts quietly built over 6 years. The same 6 years she had read as nothing more than long hours and missed dinners. He put everything back exactly as he found it, located his clipboard under the bed, and walked out. That evening, he came home to find Nia in the living room, speaking in the lowered voice people use when they want privacy, but are not quite far enough away to guarantee it. He caught one sentence before she noticed him. "He does not know yet. We are almost done, Trent." He walked to the kitchen, helped Amara finish homework, put her to bed, read her 2 chapters, prayed with her, turned off her lamp. Then he came back downstairs. Mia was at the kitchen table, phone face down, hands flat in front of her, waiting. "I know about Trent," he said. Quiet, deliberate. She opened her mouth, closed it. "I am not asking you to explain right now. I am telling you that I know." And then Nia's composure, held together with both hands for weeks, cracked straight through. The tears came suddenly and fully, the way things come when they have been held back past their limit. "I felt like I was disappearing," she managed. "You were always working, always somewhere else." "I know that is not an excuse." "It is not," he said quietly. "I know." Her voice broke. "I know, Ken." From a psychological standpoint, what Nia described has a name: emotional invisibility. The experience of existing within a relationship while feeling fundamentally unseen by the person who matters most. Attachment research consistently shows that when a person's core need for emotional presence goes unmet for long enough, they become vulnerable to anyone who offers focused attention, regardless of that person's actual character. Nia had not stopped loving her husband. She had stopped feeling like her husband could see her. That distinction matters, not for what it excuses, but for what it reveals about the real fracture that needed repairing. From the hallway came small, careful footsteps. Amara appeared in the kitchen doorway in her pajamas, eyes wide and red. She looked at her mother crying. She looked at her father standing still. Then she crossed the kitchen and wrapped both arms around Ken's waist, pressing her face against his side. "Daddy, please do not leave Mommy. I am scared." Ken placed one hand on top of his daughter's head and held it there. He closed his eyes. Day 19. He still carried her. Nia stood at the bedroom doorway watching him approach, and something moved across her face, between disbelief and shame and the earliest, most fragile beginning of something that might eventually become gratitude. He lifted her, carried her down the hallway, down the stairs, to the front door, set her down. This time, he looked directly into her eyes. His voice carried the full, trembling weight of a man choosing love in the middle of genuine pain. "I love you, even while you are breaking my heart." Naya's hand went to her mouth. He picked up his keys and walked out. Now, while all of this was unfolding inside the Whitaker home, Shanice Brooks, Naya's closest friend, called that same afternoon. Warm tone, concerned phrasing, every word carefully chosen. "Naya, listen. 30 days is almost up. You file, you move forward. You do not owe that man anything more." Shanice had been saying variations of this for months, always framed as loyalty, always delivered with the warmth of someone acting purely out of love. What Shanice was very careful never to mention was her own interest in the outcome of this divorce. But that full picture would surface soon enough. Shanice represented what researchers studying marital breakdown call third-party escalation, a pattern in which someone close to one partner amplifies existing relationship stress rather than helping de-escalate it. Sometimes this happens out of misguided loyalty, sometimes out of self-interest. The most dangerous voices are not always the ones that sound hostile. Sometimes the most damaging voice in the room sounds exactly like a friend. That same afternoon, Ken made a phone call of his own. Malik Thompson, a divorce attorney known throughout Atlanta for cold, methodical effectiveness, met with Ken for 90 minutes downtown. Ken brought 2 folders. The second contained the complete picture of his actual financial standing: properties, partnerships, LLC structures, and the legal protections he had quietly put in place 6 months earlier, after Big Mama Gloria had said simply, "Son, if that woman is making plans without you, make sure you have plans she does not know about either." Malik reviewed the folder, looked up. "Mr. Whitaker, if this goes to court, you do not simply win. You walk away with everything." Ken was quiet for a moment. "I do not want everything. I just needed to know I could protect what I built." He picked up his folders and walked back out into the Atlanta afternoon. Ken's decision to meet Malik reflects what psychologists describe as restoring agency, a fundamental need that betrayal violently disrupts. When a person discovers they have been deceived, one of the most destabilizing effects is the sudden feeling of having lost control over their own life. Knowing you have options, that you are choosing to stay rather than being forced to, that is often the first step toward genuine healing. Ken was not staying because he had no choice. He was staying because he was choosing to. Inside the Whitaker home, the tension had a physical texture. Like air before a storm, everything too still and too bright. Naya's older sister Latrice called regularly. "Do not do something you cannot undo. A good man is not something you throw away because a friend told you to find yourself." Amara drew a picture at school, her teacher sent home in a sealed envelope. 2 tall figures and 1 small one, holding hands in front of a house. The small figure was labeled "Me." Both tall figures were simply labeled "Home." Ken found it on the kitchen counter that evening. He folded it carefully and put it in the chest pocket of his jacket. The next morning, day 20, he walked into the bedroom and lifted his wife, carried her down the hallway, down the stairs, to the front door. "I love you," he said. And Naya, for the first time in 20 mornings, said it back, quietly, barely above a whisper. "I love you too." What Nia was about to discover about the man she had been planning to leave, and what the truth about Trent Maxwell would finally expose, was something none of them were prepared for. It was Big Mama Gloria who told her, not out of cruelty, Because Gloria Whitaker had lived long enough to recognize a woman standing at the edge of a decision she could not walk back from. And she was constitutionally incapable of watching someone drive off a cliff when she had the truth in her hands. Day 25 was a Saturday. Nia drove over to Big Mama's house in Vine City to return a borrowed casserole dish. A 10-minute errand. But Big Mama met her at the door with sweet tea and the particular expression she reserved for conversations that were going to take much longer. They sat at the kitchen table. Afternoon light came through the curtains, warm and patient, with nowhere else to be. Big Mama looked at Nia directly. "Baby, how much do you actually know about what my son has built?" "I know Ken works hard. He manages construction projects. He owns 8 of them," Big Mama said. The room went still. 8 rental properties, plus a silent partnership in a development firm that just broke ground on a major project off Northside Drive. 6 years he has been building it, quietly, without announcement, because that is how my son works. He fixed the back fence at our old house before I even knew it was broken. Nia sat without moving. "He never told me," she whispered. "No, he did not," Big Mama nodded. "Because Ken shows love the way he does everything else. By doing. By building something and putting your name on the deed without making a speech about it." She paused. "Your name is on several of those deeds, Nia. Has been for years." Then Nia pressed both hands over her face and began to cry. The way a person cries when every decision they have made has been built on entirely the wrong information. "I thought he was just—" She could not finish. "You thought he was ordinary," Big Mama said gently. "And you let someone else convince you that ordinary was beneath you." From a psychological standpoint, what Nia experienced in that moment is called negative attribution bias. The tendency, built up slowly over years of emotional distance, to interpret a partner's behavior through the most unflattering possible lens. When Ken worked late, Nia no longer read dedication, she read indifference. When he was quiet at dinner, she no longer read exhaustion, she read dismissal. Over time, she had stopped seeing her husband as a full person, and had started seeing only the version that confirmed the story she had already decided was true. Negative attribution bias does not require malice to be destructive. It only requires enough time, enough distance, and the absence of honest communication. Nia sat in her car in Big Mama's driveway for more than 20 minutes before she could drive. Then she called her sister, Latrice. "I need you to look into someone. Trent Maxwell, Buckhead. Claims to be in commercial real estate." Latrice, who worked in financial compliance, called back within 2 hours. The picture that emerged was not the one Trent had been presenting. Trent Maxwell had constructed his entire identity on leased cars and a lifestyle sustained on credit months past due. There were civil judgments against him in Fulton County. There was a documented pattern of targeting women in vulnerable transitions. Women who felt overlooked, quietly successful, emotionally accessible. The upscale condo he used for their meetings? Rented through a property management company. One of Ken's property management companies. Her husband had known. At some point, he had known exactly where Trent Maxwell was living, and he had carried her to the front door every single morning anyway. The weight of that was almost impossible to hold. When Nia came home, she told Ken everything. All of it, without omission and without defense. Ken listened completely still, no interruptions. When she finished, the house was quiet. "I already knew about Trent's connection to my properties," he said. Nia looked up slowly. "How long?" "Long enough." "And you still carried me every morning." It was not a question. Yes, he said. Why did you not do something? You had every reason. I was going to, Ken said. And for the first time, something hard surfaced in his voice. Controlled, but unmistakably real. I had paperwork ready. I was prepared to force him out. What stopped you? A pause. Amara walked into the room. What Ken described, choosing restraint in the presence of his child, reflects something forgiveness researchers observe consistently. The decision to step back from retaliation is almost never purely rational. It is triggered by something that reconnects a person to their deepest values. For Ken, that connection point was his daughter. She did not simply interrupt his plan. She reminded him of who he was and who he refused to become. Studies consistently show that people who pursue retaliation report lower long-term emotional recovery than those who step back. The brain experiences revenge as problem-solving, but the relief it promises almost never matches what it delivers. What Latrice uncovered about Shanice Brooks completed the picture. Shanice had known about Ken's real financial situation for months, long before she ever started encouraging Nia to file for divorce. A mutual contact in Atlanta's real estate community had let the information slip at an industry event. Shanice had taken that knowledge and quietly worked it. Pushed Nia toward a settlement, position herself as the trusted guide, and find a way to benefit from assets Nia did not yet know existed. Every phone call, every "girl, you deserve better," every carefully timed nudge toward the attorney's office. None of it had been loyalty. When Nia understood the full shape of what Shanice had been doing, she did not cry. She sat on the edge of the bathtub upstairs in silence, the kind that follows the collapse of something you had believed in completely. Two people she had trusted. Both had been building something at her expense, and the one person she had been preparing to walk away from had been quietly, permanently building something with her name on it. That night, the argument finally happened. The real one. Years of accumulated pain poured into the living room all at once. Nia's voice rose first, all the humiliation and grief and self-directed anger coming out together. Ken pressed his palm flat against the wall, once hard, and the framed wedding photograph from Ebenezer Baptist rocked on its nail. They said the things that had been sitting unsaid for years, about loneliness, about being invisible, about how two people who genuinely loved each other had drifted into parallel lives until they no longer recognized the person across the table. Upstairs, Amara sat at the top of the stairs with her stuffed rabbit pressed to her chest. She did not come down. She waited. Gradually, the voices got quieter, and quieter still, until there was only the sound of two people in the same room, spent and honest, and finally in the same place at the same time. The next morning, day 29, Ken walked in at 5:15. His wife was already sitting up, waiting. He crossed the room, lifted her, carried her down the hallway, down the stairs, to the front door. He set her down. Nia reached up and pressed both hands gently against the sides of his face. Her eyes were full. "I am sorry," she said. "I am genuinely sorry, Ken, for all of it." He covered her hands with his and held them there. Tomorrow was day 30, and day 30 was going to change everything. What happens on the final morning, and the secret his wife had been carrying alone for an entire week, is the part of this story you will not see coming. Day 30 came in on a quiet November morning. The air was cool and clean, the sweet gum trees finally bare, The sky, that pale, washed-out gray that settles over Atlanta in early fall. Stripped down, honest, showing you exactly what it is. Ken woke at 5:15, made 2 cups of coffee, stood at the kitchen window and looked at the empty street, the porch swing hanging still, the neighbor's cat crossing the yard with that early morning purposefulness cats carry like a personal philosophy. Then he set his mug down and walked upstairs. His wife was already awake, lying on her side in the low gray light, watching the door. She had been awake for a while, carrying things privately that she had rehearsed saying, then decided against, then rehearsed again. Ken came to her side of the bed. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he bent down and lifted her, one arm beneath her knees, one behind her back, the same way he had lifted her 30 mornings in a row, the same way he had carried her across the threshold at Ebenezer Baptist Church 10 years ago, while the whole congregation stood and Big Mama Gloria pressed a tissue to both eyes in the third pew. He carried her down the hallway. Amara's door was already open. She stood in the hallway in her pajamas, hair still wild from sleep, watching with enormous, careful eyes. She said nothing, just watched. He carried Nia down the stairs, to the front door, set her down, held both of her hands. When he spoke, his voice carried none of the hollowness of day one, just the full, honest weight of a man who had spent 30 mornings choosing, on purpose, to love someone even when that love was costing him something real. I love you, and I am not signing those papers. Nia's breath caught. I do not want this to be over, he said. I want to rebuild this, right here, with you. But only if you are completely in, because I am finished doing this halfway. The tears Nia had been holding all morning finally came. I do not want the divorce, she said. Her voice was barely there. I have not truly wanted it for a long time. I just did not know how to tell you I was drowning without admitting how much of the drowning was my own doing. She pressed her face against his chest. He wrapped both arms around her. Then she stepped back and looked up at him. There is something I have needed to tell you for a week. There is no right moment, so I am just going to say it. He waited. I am pregnant. The word dropped into the morning like a stone into still water. I found out 7 days ago, she whispered. I did not tell you because I did not know if we were going to make it. I was frightened. He pulled her back in, held her, said nothing for a long moment. From the staircase, Amara's voice broke through like light through a cracked window. Mommy, is it a good cry or a bad cry? Ken looked over Nia's shoulder at his daughter on the stairs, stuffed rabbit in hand, entirely convinced her presence could resolve whatever was happening, which honestly was not far from the truth. He smiled, full and unguarded, the first completely free smile in 30 days. It is a good cry, baby girl. Come here. Amara covered the distance at full speed and hit both her parents at once. What the Whitakers moved through over 30 days aligns with what attachment researchers call earned security, the process by which two people who have experienced relational damage rebuild safety not through the absence of conflict, but through the experience of surviving conflict together and choosing each other anyway. The 30-day challenge had not fixed their marriage by erasing its problems. It had fixed it by forcing them, daily, back into proximity, until the armor they had both been wearing finally wore thin enough to allow genuine contact. Love is less a feeling that arrives and more a practice that opens a door. That weekend, Big Mama Gloria hosted a gathering in her Vine City backyard that started at noon and was still going at 7 in the evening. The whole Whitaker family was there. Soul food covered 3 folding tables. Gospel music came from a Bluetooth speaker on the back porch railing. Children ran through the yard. There was laughter and crying and the particular deep joy that comes not from everything being perfect, but from something nearly lost being found again. In front of everyone, Ken took the divorce papers from the envelope. He held one end. Nia held the other. They tore them in half together, then into quarters, then dropped the pieces into Big Mama's fire pit and watched them curl and dissolve into smoke. The family watched in silence. Then Amara clapped her hands, and the silence broke. Big Mama stood at the edge of the patio with her sweet tea, watching her son and daughter-in-law in the firelight. Then she turned to her neighbor Dorothy and said, "I told that boy 20 years ago, you want a marriage that lasts, you do not build it once. You build it every single morning you wake up." Dorothy nodded. "My Clarence used to say the same thing." "How long were you and Clarence married?" 51 years. Big Mama nodded slowly. "Then Clarence was a very wise man." The following week, Nia removed Trent from every platform she owned. No announcement, no confrontation. Just quietly, the way you close a door on a room that holds nothing you need. She did the same with Shanice. Ken called Malik Thompson. 4 words. Close the file. We are good. And together, they called their church and scheduled their first counseling session. The Whitaker family was healing. But what they built from the ashes of those 30 days, and what arrived 6 months later, is the part of this story that will stay with you long after you have turned off the light. 6 months is not a long time in the life of a marriage. But sometimes 6 months is precisely enough to understand what you nearly lost, and to build something more intentional in its place. The Whitakers did the work. They attended counseling through their church, quiet, unhurried sessions where both of them were required to say true things without defensive armor. Some of those sessions were harder than the living room argument had been. In counseling, there is no adrenaline to carry you through. There is only you, the truth, and the space between you that you are choosing to close. Ken learned that providing and being present are not the same thing. That a woman can know she is financially secure and still feel completely alone. He started coming home earlier, not every evening, but most. And when he could not, he called. Not to relay logistics, simply to say, "I am thinking about you. I will be home by 8. His wife learned that the attention she had chased elsewhere carried nothing beneath its surface. She came back to her marriage with the particular clarity that belongs only to people who have seen what the alternative looks like and found it hollow. They still disagreed over dishes, school schedules, the work boots Ken left directly in the path of the back door, a matter of ongoing discussion since 2017. Marriage does not become frictionless because you have survived something hard. It becomes more honest, more willing, more worth the friction. What the Whitakers experienced during those 6 months reflects what psychologists call post-traumatic growth, the phenomenon in which individuals and relationships following genuine crisis emerge not merely restored, but measurably stronger than before the rupture. It requires something specific, the willingness of both people to turn toward the wound rather than away from it, and to treat honest communication not as a threat, but as the only real path forward. Betrayal, in this framework, is not simply a destruction. For those willing to do the work, it can become the most clarifying event a relationship ever survives. In April, 6 months after day 30, Ken and Nia returned to Ebenezer Baptist for a vow renewal ceremony. Just family, close friends, the couple from church who had been married 43 years sitting in the third row next to Big Mama Gloria, who had claimed that pew for herself sometime in the previous decade and showed no signs of relinquishing it. Amara served as the flower girl, with the gravity of someone given a significant civic duty, distributing petals along the aisle with focused precision and quietly checking her coverage twice before the ceremony began. Ken carried his wife across the threshold. The entire congregation rose. Big Mama Gloria, third row, pressed a tissue to both eyes, and would later maintain to Dorothy that she had simply had something in both eyes at the same time, which was a coincidence and not a subject requiring further discussion. That evening, at the reception in the fellowship hall, which carried the exact smell every church fellowship hall in the American South has always carried, Ken took out his phone. He had never posted anything in his life. He looked into the camera and said, without any rehearsal, "Those 30 days did not save my marriage. They just opened my eyes to what I already had." He put his phone in his pocket and walked back to his wife. The video reached over 1 million views in 11 days. Comments came from across the country. Men saying it was what they had needed to hear. Women tagging their husbands. Older women writing, "This is exactly what our marriage looked like before we figured it out." Amara read the comment section with the composed satisfaction of an 8-year-old who had known the ending since the very beginning. 3 months after the vow renewal, Nia gave birth to a boy. They named him Elijah James Whitaker. Elijah for the prophet. James for Ken's grandfather, a man who had built 3 houses with his own hands and raised 6 children in one of them. When Amara met her brother for the first time, she studied him seriously for a long moment. Then she looked up. "He looks like Daddy." Ken laughed, fully, freely, in a way he had not laughed in what felt like years. Together, Ken and Nia launched a TikTok series called 30 Days to Save a Black Marriage. Not a program, not a formula. Simply their story, told honestly, with every jagged edge intact. The betrayal, the 30 mornings, the argument in the living room, the papers burning in Big Mama's fire pit. Thousands of couples across the country watched it. Some started their own 30 days. Big Mama Gloria watched every episode from her recliner in Vine City, nodding at the screen and saying, "Mm-hmm," in the particular way she had of confirming things she had known from the very beginning. This story teaches us something that no motivational quote could ever say better than a long marriage already has. Ken did not save his marriage with a grand gesture. He saved it by doing one small, specific thing: carrying his wife to the front door. Every single morning, even when it cost him something, especially then. If you have been married for decades, you already know this truth in your bones. Love is not the feeling you had at the altar. It is the Tuesday morning you made his coffee without being asked. It is the way you still set 2 cups out of habit, even now, even years later. Those small, repeated actions are not minor. They are the entire structure. And here is the practical truth this story leaves behind, one worth writing in the little notebook you keep by the kitchen phone. The people we love most often feel most invisible to us. Not because we stopped caring, but because we stopped noticing. Tonight, think of one person in your life: a husband, a grown child, a grandchild, and name, out loud or on paper, one specific thing they do that you have stopped acknowledging. The way he always checked the tire pressure before a road trip. The way your daughter calls every Sunday, even when she is exhausted. Say it. Write it down. Tell them tomorrow. That is Ken's 30-day challenge distilled to its simplest form. Notice the person in front of you, on purpose, one more time today. It costs nothing. And as this story reminds us, the cost of not doing it is something none of us can afford. Real people wrote these scripts with passion and purpose to spark reflection and change. AI was merely a helpful tool that polished the delivery, making sure profound messages about respect, redemption, and human dignity reached as many hearts as possible. Production team, story and screenplay by Quinn Fung. Character development and visual conceptualization by Chris Nguyen. Video scripting and scene adaptation by David Nguyen. A passionate team dedicated to bringing this story to life.